Hello, my name is Tim Major. I'm the CEO at Operdo, and I'm really glad to see so many people are joining us for today's session. Before we get started, just a couple quick housekeeping items. First, today's session is being recorded, and we'll be sending the recording out to everyone who registered after the webinar. So if you need to step away, not to worry, you can revisit the discussion later. We'll make sure everyone gets a copy. Secondly, we encourage you to use the Q&A panel throughout the session. If anyone has questions that come up, feel free to throw them into the Q&A panel and we'll address them as we go, or we'll also have a Q&A period at the end where we can jump in and tackle some of these questions. For those of you that haven't met me before, I've spent many years working in the hospitality technology, helping hotels and operators with various pieces of technology, but in particular property management systems for the last 15 or 20 years. A big focus for our work at Operdo is to use the best of technology to strengthen your direct relationships with guests, which is exactly what today's session is about. Today, we're going to dig into a topic that's been an issue for a while, but it's only becoming more dramatic in recent years for boutique hotels, and that is OTA brand hijacking and how it impacts your direct bookings. To walk us through this in more detail, I'm joined by Axel, our solutions engineer here at Operdo. Axel works closely with hotels and partners to help them understand their issues and how this issue will appear in the real world, and how hotels can help detect this issue and ultimately confront it. Axel will be sharing some examples and walking through a short demonstration of how hotels can identify when OTAs are bidding on their brand and how that affects direct booking performance. So with that, I'll hand it over to Axel to get us started.
Thank you, Tim. Great to see everyone on the call today. We're going to have an interesting discussion here ahead of us. We're going to cover out a few different areas of this specific topic. We're going to talk a little bit high level just to start around how AI these days plays into hotel tech stacks, just to kind of focus our conversation for later on in the presentation. We will talk about how this issue that we're talking about, predatory OTAs, brand hijacking, how that shows up and how you can identify it. And then we'll talk about how you can, just on your own, actually defend against it. And we'll also talk a little bit about how Operto can help defend against it. And then obviously we have a Q&A and we have some resources for you at the end as well. For the Q&A, feel free to drop your questions in as we go, as mentioned, but we'll cover a bunch of stuff here throughout our session together. As mentioned, my name is Axel. I work as solutions engineer here at Operto. Work with tons of different hotels and tons of different areas, but this one, direct bookings, is one that's close to all of our hearts here, and we're really excited to talk about it. So let's dig in. Just to set the stage a little bit in terms of what Operto has evolved into over the past couple of years that you may not be super aware of if you followed Operto for a long time, is that we've really adopted the technology that is agentic AI. You might have heard this. It's a pretty buzzy terminology, and often it doesn't really mean that much because it means too many things. In our world, it means that we use AI in the background of a lot of our processes and a lot of our new products that is able to do a few specific things. We take specific roles or tasks and assign them to individual agents or teammates. We think about them. And they're able to do things that a normal like AI type chatbot is not able to do. Specifically, they're able to take actions, they can make decisions, and they have context to do those things. If you have multiple agents working, they also work together on a shared context as well as collaborating on actual actions. And they also get real-time information and adapt to that information. So if one agent learns something new, or if one integration is feeding the system something, all of those agents will share that understanding and act accordingly, which is a totally different way of looking at AI than just kind of like chatting with your ChatGPT. Ultimately, we want to deploy these tools to make sure that hospitality is proactive, that it's human, that it's profitable, and really take kind of grunt work away and leave you guys in front of your guests and reclaim some direct bookings as well. So we're going to focus on how agentic AI can be executed in that specific context today. Okay, so the modern hotelier's challenge. There's a lot of them, as we know, but specifically today, we're going to talk about this brand hijacking issue that is surprisingly common and probably occurs with most of your properties, unfortunately. With OTAs, there's obviously the OTAs that are used for discovery. So you've got Airbnb and Booking and Expedia, and that's something they do. They do discovery. Someone goes to Booking, they search for a place, and they show a bunch of properties. That's fine. That is their business. You pay them for that. That's marketing expenses. When we define the term predatory OTAs, it's the ones who don't provide any additional value to you or to the guest. There's no discovery component, there's no additional services. They're not really doing anything except for leeching commissions from you and confusing guests. So those OTAs come into play when someone goes and searches directly for your property name. So someone types in your hotel name into Google, and at that point, these predatory OTAs, they start bidding for your specific name and show up instead of your official website on Google because they're paying for it. And unless you're specifically doing the same thing, in which you might be competing, in which case you might be competing, they will actually show up above you and very often hijack or intercept that direct booking intent, the guest who was intending to go to your website directly. So what that actually shows up as, what it looks like, is like this. So here's just some examples that I pulled up right before the call. You'll see the ones highlighted here are the ones that are these kind of sketchy OTAs. So you see Airbnb there, you see Trivago. Yeah, they have their things. They're kind of just trying to show up. It's not great that they're bidding on your name. Same thing with Booking.com there on the right. But the other ones, they're really not providing any value. Bookonline.com, guestreservations.com. And worst case, they're actually trying to make themselves out to appear as your property. A lot of the times, they will make the descriptions sound like they are you, that they are the direct booking website. There are some situations where they will say, like on the bottom right there, you see it says on the independent OTA, but normal, yes, they don't know what an OTA is necessarily. So they still think that that is something to do with an independent property. So they really want to show up as you. You even see there it says call us. If you do call them, they will answer and say, this is Living Water Resort reservation desk, which is crazy. So it's very, very deceptive, all the tools that they are deploying. There are many of these, unfortunately. Here are a few: guestreservations.com, reservation desk, online reservations. Hotel One would be another one. There's 5, 6, 7, 8 of these that show up all the time. And if you type in your name, it will probably show up. Sometimes it's in variations, so like your hotel's property name with your location, or you type in reservations if you wanted to go directly to the booking engine, for example. That's usually when they try to get in and again really divert those high intent bookers who want to go and actively make a reservation with you. One other thing that these guys do is that they are not only deceptive in how they portray themselves, but also how they actually advertise. So they are after low hanging fruit, and they are willing to go to quite far extremes to get there. So they're usually not going to bid against a ton of other bidders for these keywords to show up in the rankings. However, they do things like geofencing. So they might not show up when you search locally because they might actually be blocking from showing. If your hotel is in New York and someone searches for property name New York, whatever, from New York, it just won't show up because they know that the hotel might be checking their own online presence. But then someone searches from Idaho and it's going to show up. So they do a lot of these things. And the other thing is that they have thousands of accounts that keep cropping up. So if they go away for a second, they'll just come back under a different name, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very challenging to kind of manually tackle these guys. So why is this a problem then? Well, ultimately, you're losing commission by paying the full commission amount, whether you're paying 18, 25, 30% to your OTAs, you're paying that money for something that would have been a direct booking. So there's a big margin cut there. Obviously, with boutique hotels, that is challenging because there's very little margin to absorb these sorts of things. And additionally, with boutique hotels, you're trying your hardest to build direct relationships with your guests, and you're also losing that. There's a lot to this, which goes beyond the commission. A few things that are very common with these predatory OTAs is that there's issues around fees. So both that they will add fees. Often you actually see them advertising like 30% discount, book with us directly, get a best rate. And then there might be like a fake discounted rate, and ultimately they add a bunch of bad fees back on. So it often comes out to be more expensive than booking with you directly. So very deceptive fees, which then guests are frustrated by the time they show up. But on the flip side of that, they might show up and have no idea that you charge for parking, or have no idea that you charge for baby cribs or whatever it might be, because your fee schedules are just not passed through properly. Same thing with the relationship. They might accept any sort of special request. They might accept, a room with a balcony, except that none of your rooms have balconies. They might pick up the phone and say, "Yep, absolutely, we're gonna get you roses on the bed at arrival." You don't offer roses on arrival; it's just not gonna happen. And these notes are never passed through because that's not in their interest. They just want the booking, and then they're out of it. In fact, we hear this all the time, but that people will actually call up and speak with someone, and they make themselves out to be the property. And then by the time they show up to the front desk, they're like, "Oh yeah, I spoke with John." But we don't have a John working here. Um, so again, some serious issues around the guest relationship. And then finally, on the guest relationship front, they don't provide contact details usually. So you'll be able to identify them this way actually. If it shows up with like a Hong Kong phone number or an Indonesian phone number or a generic email that is not a guest email, very, very challenging to get in touch with the guests after a booking has been made, which for certain properties, especially if they're sort of self-check-in or partial front desk, high properties can mean huge issues for getting people actually even just through the door and through the check-in process. So what does this actually look like then? In reality, guests might hear about your properties from lots of different places, right? So word of mouth, social media, referrals, could be when they're planning their trip, they're chatting with AI and they learn about your property and they've narrowed it down. And either way, they've found that your property is the one that they want to stay with. They mentally made that choice already, or they're going to look something up about your property directly. Now, when they Google your name, they type it in, and these guys show up and they basically divert that traffic onto their page. The issue with tracking this is not only what I mentioned before around geofencing and these kind of deceptive practices that they do to make it difficult, but there are other things that come into play here around the standard KPIs that are tracked by marketing teams in hotels. So things that people are tracking, things like website traffic, um, everything around conversion with that, or your OTA commissions or OTA percentage numbers, all those sorts of things are super relevant to track. Standard KPIs for hotels, occupancy, ADR, etc. Great things to track, but they don't take this one item into account. So you're not looking at maybe brand keyword bidding by OTAs, how search results show up. Even if you're doing SEO, this actually isn't SEO. This is when you're actively bidding, so they're paying to show up above you. Um, and it's also hard to kind of quantify or track guest confusion in the booking path. It's something that is very anecdotal in most properties where like people don't know, like, oh yeah, these guys who show up with that phone number, so it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. Front desk probably knows, but it's anecdotal. It's not tracked as a number. So a lot of the times, this actually remains invisible, and people don't necessarily know how big of an issue this is. There is one way to find these bookings in your PMS or your booking software today, and it's to find the booking source. And the easiest one to determine is actually Expedia's affiliates. So Expedia affiliate network is usually what these guys show up as, because they're not real OTAs, right? They're affiliates. So they slide in through Expedia's system, but they are not part of Expedia. That being said, Expedia doesn't want to shut them down because they're getting paid along the way. They're just paying us an affiliate fee, but they're taking the commission. So it's not in their best interest to shut it down. So those ones are good ones to look for. Expedia affiliate network. But again, most people don't know to look for these as a point to track in your KPIs. There's other OTAs doing this as well, but that's the easiest one to see. Okay, so we actually wanted to take a look and see if any of your properties are showing up with predatory OTAs present. So if you would like to, if you're willing to share your property's name, you could drop it into the chat and we'll do a quick search right on the call here. I'm gonna open my chat up and see what's coming through here. Okay, elevation lofts, Sophie's guest house. Okay, we're gonna check these out. So I'm gonna hop out of my normal screen share here. Let's see if you can still see my screen. I think you can. Okay, we're gonna try to start with Sophie's guest house. I'm just gonna do reservations because I'm ready to book. Let's see what shows up. Okay, so a good example here. We've got Book.com, book it, and hotels bidding. Okay, fair enough. They're trying to get some discovery. It's not great practice of them, but fair enough. And then we have one of these. Here we go. Online reservations, 2026 updated rates. Reserve your hotel. They're not saying that they're an OTA. They look entirely like they are your direct booking website, and they're showing up here a full step above the direct booking website here. So, no, Aaron, sorry about that. It happens to everyone. Okay, elevation lofts. Let's take a look. Elevation lofts hotel. Just gonna split this up. Let's take a look. Oh, elevation lofts is doing well. Look at that. Excellent. Showing up. See if we get any other sponsored results. Looking pretty good. Let's see if we add this. Okay, we got some bidders here. Booking, hotels. So here I am. Here we go. Bookonline.com. There they are. So they are showing up. And the other trick here is usually if someone has decided not to bid on a desktop, they often bid on phones instead. So it's across device types in addition to geographies. So we might just leave it at that one for now and hop back here. Okay, but feel free to do this later. The easiest way to do it is actually to open an incognito tab and just run your name through, add your location and maybe reservations at the end just to show that you're a high intent booker, and then often that shows up. Okay, let me come out of my chat here and just see where we are. Okay, so what's the cost of this then? We want to quantify this a little bit. If we're counting this up, then it can add up really quickly. This obviously depends on the size of your property and the size of the problem. But think about the amounts that's being paid in commissions and think about that this would have been a direct booking if it went directly to your own site. Now, if we just do some quick maths here, at an ADR of 275, commission rate at the sort of 20-25% mark, and the 2-night stay, this adds up really quickly. $3,300 a month, 40,000 per year, and this could have totally been avoided, which is kind of crazy. We have some resources to run some of this math with you. So if you are interested about the size of this problem in terms of numbers, even if you haven't necessarily been able to pinpoint it in your own systems, please let us know, and we can look at some calculations together to figure this out. Now, how do we actually defend against this then? Well, the first thing to do is to figure out if it's happening. So to actually detecting it. And again, this actually is a little bit of manual work because you'll have to check on your phone. You'll have to maybe use a VPN to go to different geographies to see if they're showing. Try some different search terms because again, they really want to target sort of really high intention traffic. Next is to understand if that's actually diverting people. So that is looking at those numbers of Expedia affiliate network bookings, for example, and also understanding if it's causing confusion for your guests when they're arriving at the front desk. Are you seeing issues with fees? Are you seeing issues with them not having got all the instructions or communication that you normally send before a stay? So just kind of understanding that guest's experience and what's gone wrong. Finally, obviously, defending here is finding strategies to try to get rid of this problem. And it's harder than you might imagine. So you can't just ask Expedia or ask Booking to switch this off. It's not a thing. They will not do that. They work with affiliates, and that's that. They're not going to switch it off. So there are other kind of fairly manual or fairly intensive ways that people tackle this. Manual monitoring, obviously, bidding on your own keywords. You can do that. You can have that agency. You can do it yourself. It's still a fair bit of work because you have to do it across different geographies, device types, all this sort of stuff as well, with the right appendixes to the words. You can also list yourself in the meta search. So that shows up on the right side of the screen under the little Google that shows the different prices for different pages, but you pay to show up high there as well. So now you're paying even more money to Google. Plus, that shows up on the right, but actually people are looking at the left when they're looking for your page. So it doesn't quite solve the issue. We actually hear a fair number of companies shutting down OTAs entirely, at least for periods of a year, just to get rid of this issue, or going to the lengths of actually entering legal battles with the OTAs over this. We haven't heard about any successful ones so far. Um, and to Hernan's point earlier, is a question about is this legal? It is technically legal because they're not formally saying that they are you, but it is very deceptive. There are some states where there might be aspects of this that is legal, but it's really hard to enforce because they are not usually US based, Canada based. They're usually sort of very sketchy shadow companies that are hard to get to, even if there are legal issues that are legit. So, if we wanted to do this a bit more systematically, how could Operto help? Well, agentic AI, we talked about this before. We actually have a specific solution for this problem, and it is our marketing agent. It does a few different things to tackle this exact issue. One is it does the monitoring that is hard for humans to do automatically, i.e., it goes and looks at your keywords, a bunch of different variations of your keywords, through different device types, different geographies to detect if this issue is present. It does that proactively, runs in the background all the time, and it lets you know if or when that issue starts showing up. When it does, it doesn't just tell you about it, it also proposes various fixes. So there are things that the AI will actually action itself. It will do it for you with your approval, and it will let you know how well that is going. So actions might include things like running a small paid campaign for Google, so giving Google a little bit of money, but actually showing up right above those other OTAs. And they tend to drop out of the rankings when they're no longer ranking high because it's cheaper for you as a property to rank on your own keywords than it is for them to. So it's not really worth it for them anymore. There are so many properties and they want low hanging fruit. So bidding against them is actually really effective. Other things that we can do is things like reporting the ads systematically. Again, using AI for that is really useful because they keep popping up. If one is gone one day, there's a new one the next day. But with technology, you can actually keep reporting them. And a handful of other solutions that it will propose and go in action and push back against these guys as well. Now, what's cool is it will actually explain how this is going. It almost looks like a chatbot, in fact, and it will tell you what am I doing in the background? What are the results? What's happening? And you can ask it, how is it going? Change the budget, change this, stop doing that, try something else, and actually have those conversations in plain language. It also combines with some other tools to really drive conversion. So, Marketing Agent is that kind of search specific tool that monitors this specific predatory OTA issue. And then there are a few other things in our suite as well of these new marketing solutions that kicks in, which we'll talk about in just a second. Now, one thing to really highlight here is that if that this is not a solution that is meant to replace your marketing team or your agency. It is a way for technology to take things that are hard to do at scale for a human and let humans focus on things that are more impactful. So for an agency to sit and click around and use VPNs and do all this stuff manually, it's going to be very, very expensive because they have to spend so much time and they have to do it every single day. So this is AI doing it for you. This is technology just offloading that, whether you have an internal team or an agency. And again, it's meant to ultimately provide solutions to get you an increase in direct bookings. Now, I mentioned there were some other tools that help with that conversion side as well. We looked at the marketing agent already. Once they land on your page, we have our direct booking assistant, which is a chatbot that will answer questions and drive people through to the booking engine very proactively. And we also have a GEO consultant, which is another very interesting tool that helps you ensure that you have visibility across AI discovery tools such as ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. Whenever someone asks, hey, where should I go and stay in New York? Your hotel, if you're in New York, should really be showing up. And this is hard to rank for because, again, how do you actually check for that systematically at scale? And that's exactly what this tool does. It looks for this with a ton of different prompt variations across different tools. And it looks, are you showing up at all? And if you are you showing up from your direct booking website or are you showing up from an OTA? And then it actually gives you both a quality score and a roadmap to improve. So this is another great option for working in conjunction with an agency or your marketing team to just give you some quick wins in terms of increasing your AI visibility. And AI visibility, as we know, it's going to be huge. There's something like 40% of people are already basing like the majority of their travel decisions based on AI, and that's growing exponentially. I don't even think yearly, but like probably monthly in how many people are using AI. So we really wanted your properties to show up there, ideally with their direct booking websites. So this suite altogether is really meant to capture those high intent bookers and convert them. Um, Tim, anything to add to that?
I was just going to note, Axel, I saw there's a question in from Hernan also on, it's a good point to touch on this, like where does the inventory come from? And are
Mhm.
the OTAs in on it? And Hernan, how you look at that is you're correct that they are pulling the inventory from the regular booking.com or Expedia APIs. So they are getting their inventory from there, but it's funneling down into that affiliate network. And the suite that Axel was just showing, the reason that we understand this better is we're fortunate enough to have the ex-CEO of Booking.com and Hotel Tonight are actually on the Operto board. So they understood how this whole distribution world worked and how all this inventory worked. And it really put us in a good place to create these tools to really combat it now, knowing the secret sauce under the distribution network. So I just thought we'd actually jump in and we could answer that question.
Yep, that's great. Really good call out. Okay, so just to wrap up then, we've got these different tools, and you obviously want to get some wins out of the webinar today. So we've got some resources for you. The first one is that you can actually get this GEO assessment for your property for free today by scanning the QR code here. Um, and when you do, all right, there we go. There's my webinar. Um, when you do, it will actually check how your property is doing with these tools that we talked about, Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude. How is it doing in terms of ranking for your different prompts that you want? It will run this in the background. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes because it's doing a bunch of work in the background. And it will just send it straight to your inbox and let you know how well you're doing, as well as give you a bit of a roadmap to improve, which you can work on. You can work with your agency to improve that visibility. That is kind of it from us today. If you want to see more about the marketing agent, you can scan the QR code that's here now, and you will be able to book a meeting with me, and we can go into more details here and look at an actual demo as well, if you like. And in the meantime, we will cover a little bit of additional Q&A here, right now.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Axel. I'll take a look now. If anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them into the Q&A and we'll go through them here. So we'll okay, see some questions coming in. So we'll cherry pick a couple. One of the questions is, what onboarding support do you provide for a new hotel partners with the marketing agent? It's a great question. One of the great things about AI is it really is a technology which in a lot of ways doesn't require a lot of onboarding. So one thing we'll do is the agents will go out and it'll pull all the information from your website, look at all of your listings, and ultimately come back with its suggestions for you. Like Axel talked about early on, if you think about agentic AI, is a lot more like having a person on your team that's actually going to do the work and do the outcomes, but really check in with you as it's learning to make these decisions. So the onboarding for the marketing agent, for example, is a couple hours, but we do have someone in-house that's an expert in these things and would work you through that onboarding process and also be there to check in with you on a regular basis to make sure that everything is moving in the right direction to ensure you're getting the results. So thanks for that question. Um, One of the other questions is in regards to the legal action, like why the legal action uh, hasn't been successful. I'd say where we're at is we're in a loophole a little bit where these affiliates are actually functioning in regards to the correct way in terms of using the affiliate APIs. Where it gets into a gray area is should they be allowed to post ads with your name on the website? And so one of the things actually the agent will do is it'll look for these legal discrepancies. It'll look at the case law for those legal discrepancies and actually provide recommendations when they've walked over that line and can actually facilitate that through to Google. So where this becomes a gray area is Google actually has specifications in their advertising that, should not allow for the fraudulent behavior of your brand. But it's a question of how often can you submit to Google? When will Google get back to you? And it really has to be on an ongoing basis with very particular language. And that's where the agent is also really good at that because it's really an expert. It can be an expert in both those areas. Um, okay, one other question that's come in is regarding any hotels that have been on agentic AI and what are the results? Axel, is that something you can touch on and some of the ROI things you've seen so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Usually what we see is that the links that show up at the top of the page above the fold, so first scroll, basically, they capture about 65% of the clicks. So if we knock the bad one out of there and replace it by yours, you will retake those 65%, which is huge already. And then we can help the marketing agent will actually connect to your website stats and look at exactly how that impacts your traffic and then conversions from there. But just thinking about that number, it usually leads to roughly 10% being reclaimed in terms of direct bookings. So bookings that would have gone to OTAs now instead of going to your direct website. That is a very rough number because it really depends on how many you're experiencing and how badly you're targeted. But give or take 10%. And usually for every percent, it's already worth it with a single percent. And if you're going 10, it's going to be huge. So long story short, ROI net of all the everything you would pay to us or Google or anyone is usually in a 10 to 20x range.
Thanks, Axel. Okay, I think we have time. We'll grab one more question here. Let me just take a look. Okay, one of the questions is, can we target specific traveler segments? So how this works is not so much segment based because it's based on the intent of the person trying to find your website. So these are individuals or companies traveling on business or leisure or last minute that they know your name, they know where they want to go, and they're putting that into a search engine to ultimately find you. So we're targeting those high intent bookers that they should go directly to your website. That would be the fair and correct and accurate and the best experience for them. So it's really targeting that high intent brand search audience. So it's really all of those segments. Um,
And that's actually why this ties in so nicely with having an agency that is doing important work on your behalf. They're doing the creative work. They're doing the work trying to find different segments, different people with people giving the right signals that they want to book your property. Great. They handle that. And then you or our agent gets to handle this kind of like high intent specific tasks that's just time consuming but not creative necessarily.
Okay. Well, thank you, Axel. And thank you everyone for joining us. It was a real pleasure to go through these materials and take some of your questions. Definitely feel free to reach out to us if you have more questions or things we can elaborate on. And we actually have a webinar coming out this Thursday that is actually going to dig into some of these issues too, and just talk through some of them in more detail. So we'll make sure to put that in the information and in the links so you'll have access to that. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate the time today. Have a great day.